Hi, greetings. It's me, Dr. Paul Gerhardt, and this is the fourth video in my management series. And today I want to talk about ethics and corporate responsibility. Yeah, how can you be a manager if you don't consider all the different things that have to do related to ethics? And so we're going to talk a little bit about today how there are some different ethical perspectives that guide our decision making as managers. We're going to identify ethical related issues and laws facing managers. We're going to explain how managers influence their ethics in the environment and outline a process for making ethical decisions. Again, and we're going to finish up by summarizing important issues surrounding corporate and social responsibility. And finally, we're going to discuss the growing importance of managing the natural environment. So, exactly what are ethics? Ethics are the moral principles and standards that guide behavior of an individual or a group. If you have ever been in any workplace and you've seen someone do something you know they're not supposed to do, they are being unethical. We generally don't recognize when people are doing the right thing. We just acknowledge that things are working the way they should. So when people are not doing the right thing, that's when things start to get off kilter and things don't work as well as possible. And of course, managers are the ones who need to be making the decisions to be able to guide people to do the right thing. Most of us think that we're good decision makers, right? That maybe we are all ethical and we're unbiased. But the fact is that most people have unconscious biases that we need to be aware of that favor themselves and their own groups. Knowing that you have biases may help you try to overcome them, but usually that's really not enough. We have to consider the basic ethical issues of lying. Many people, for instance, will lie, and some more than others. And depending on each situation, sometimes people can benefit from a lie. Well, that is a basic ethical argument against lying in favor of being honesty. People often lie or commit other ethical transgressions somewhat mindlessly without realizing the full array of their negative personal consequences. So you have to be aware that most people have an unconscious bias that favors themselves and their own group, and that managers often hire people that are like them. They think they are immune to conflicts of interest, and they take credit more credit than they usually deserve, and very often they're blaming others when they deserve the blame themselves. So you have to consider ethics in everything that you do. An ethical issue is a situation or problem or opportunity in which an individual must choose among several actions that must be evaluated as morally right or wrong. And in business ethics, that's the moral principles and standards that guide behavior in the business world. There are things that you should do and things that you shouldn't do in every work environment. And you have to consider a moral philosophy, and those are principles, rules, and values that people use in deciding what is right and what is wrong. And then we have to understand there's something called universalism, which is the ethical system stating that all people should uphold certain values that society needs to function. All right, so let's get into a little bit of theory here. Some efforts have been made to establish global universal ethical principles for business. The CAUX, C-A-U-X Roundtable, this is a group of international executives based in CAUX, Switzerland, worked with business leaders from Japan, Europe, and the United States to create the CAUX principles for business. And there are essentially two basic ethical ideals that underpin the CAUX principles. So, Kaiose, and human dignity. And kaiosei means living and working together for the common good, allowing cooperation and mutual prosperity to coexist with healthy and fair competition. Human dignity concerns the value of each person as an end, not a means, to the fulfillment of others' purposes. And research conducted by the Institute for Global Ethics identified 5 core ethical values that are common in all human cultures, including truthfulness, responsibility, fairness, respectfulness, and, of course, compassion. So, let's talk about some ethical systems. There's something called egoism. And that is an ethical principle holding that an individual's self-interest is the actual motive of all conscious action. Relativism. That's a philosophy that bases ethical behavior on the opinions and behaviors of relevant other people. Utilitarianism. That's an ethical system stating that the greatest good for the greatest number should be the overriding concern of decision makers. And then virtue ethics. That's a perspective that what is moral comes from what a mature person or with good moral character would deem as right. So egoism, relativism, utilitarianism, and then virtue ethics. So, let's get into Kohlberg's stages of moral development. The first is the pre-conventional stage. This is about making decisions based on immediate self-interest. An example of that would be you take a flash drive home from work because you need one and you don't want to pay for it. Then there's the conventional stage. That's where you make decisions that conform to expectations of groups and institutions like family, peer, and society. An example of this would be you think about taking the flash drive, but you decide against it because it would not look right. Or the principled stage, which is about making decisions based on self-chosen ethical principles. An example, you do not consider taking the flash drive from work because you believe that it would be wrong. So that's the principled stage. So pre-conventional stage, conventional stage, and principled stage. These are Kohlberg's stages of moral development. With the law, something that I can remember coming about was the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. And that's an act that was established to have strict accounting and reporting rules to make senior managers more accountable to improve and maintain investor confidence. So, insider trading, illegal campaign contributions, bribery, kickbacks, famous court cases, and other scandals have created a perception that business leaders use illegal means to gain competitive advantages to increase profits or improve their own personal positions. Neither young managers nor consumers believe that top executives are doing a good job to establish high ethical standards. Most business leaders believe uphold ethical standards in business practices, but many managers and their organizations must frequently deal with ethical dilemmas, and these issues are becoming increasingly complex. Here are a few of the dilemmas challenging managers and employees today. With brands, in-your-face marketing campaigns have sparked anti-brand attitudes among people who see tactics as manipulative or deceptive. CEO pay is a big one. Nearly 3/4 of Americans say that executives' pay packages are excessive. Commercialism in schools. Parents in hundreds of communities have battled advertising in public schools. Religion at work. Many people seek spiritual renewal in the workplace, while others argue that this trend violates religious freedom and separation of church and the boardroom. Sweatshops. At many institutions, students have formed anti-sweatshop groups, and they picket clothing manufacturers, toy makers, and retailers. And then there's the wage issue that we're seeing all the time. More than half the workers feel that they're underpaid, especially because wages since 1992 have not grown as fast as productivity levels. So there are a lot of different ethical issues that continue to emerge in the news, and we as leaders need to consider what is our image like? What are we going to do to maintain an ethical image for our organization? Ethics are not shaped only by laws and by individual development and virtue. They are also influenced by the company's work environment. Ethical climate of an organization is really all about the decisions that are being evaluated on a daily basis, right and wrong. When people make decisions that are judged by ethical criteria, certain questions always arise. Why did she do it? Were her motives good or were they bad? And very often, responsibility for unethical acts are placed squarely on individuals who commit them. But the work environment has a profound influence as well. When employees feel pressured to meet unreasonable goals or deadlines, they may act unethically. And managers, in part, are responsible for setting the right standards by selecting employees with the ability to meet standards and providing employees with the right resources required for that success. Managers also need to keep the lines of communication open so that employees will discuss problems in meeting goals rather than resorting to unethical and possibly illegal behavior. So, I can remember being put in situations in my workplaces where you would essentially be chastised or demoted if you didn't meet a certain expectation. There are danger signs that managers must consider. And here are some of the things. So, excessive emphasis on short-term revenues over long-term considerations. Failure to establish written codes of ethics, a desire for simpler, quick-fix solutions to ethical problems, an unwillingness to take an ethical stand that may impose some financial costs, consideration of ethics solely as an issue or a public relations tool, a lack of clear procedures for handling ethical problems, and then responsiveness to demands of shareholders at the expense of other constituents. So, ethical programs should be considered. When you're both personally moral and a moral manager, you will be seen as a true ethical leader. You can have strong personal character, but if you pay more attention to other things and ethics are managed by neglect, you won't have a reputation as an ethical leader. So corporate ethic programs could help, and these things include formal ethics codes that articulate company expectations regarding ethics, ethics committees that develop policies, evaluate actions, and investigate violations, ethical communication systems that gives employees a means for reporting problems and getting guidance, ethics officers or ombudspersons who investigate allegations and provide education, ethics training programs, disciplinary processes for addressing unethical behavior. Ethics programs can range from compliance-based to integrity-based. Compliance-based ethics programs are designed by corporate counsel to prevent, detect, and punish legal violations. Compliance-based programs increase surveillance and controls on people and impose punishments on wrongdoers. Integrity-based ethics programs go beyond the mere avoidance of illegality. They are concerned with the law, but also with instilling in people personal responsibility for ethical behavior. With such a program, individuals govern themselves through a set of guiding principles that they embrace. So, ethical decision making takes full awareness, realizing the issue has ethical implications, moral judgment, which is about knowing what actions are morally defensible, and then moral character, the strength and persistence to act in accordance with your ethics despite what kind of challenges are there. So, a process for ethical decision making starts with understanding all the moral standards and recognizing the moral impacts of benefits, harm to others, rights exercise, rights that are denied. You have to be able to define the complete moral problem, then determine the economic outcomes, consider the legal requirements, evaluate ethical duties, and then propose a convincing moral solution. So there are always costs with ethical failure that need to be considered. At level 1 costs, paying fines and receiving penalties from the government. Level 2 costs are spending time and money for audits and legal inquiries, providing remedial education and taking corrective action, being subject to government oversight. And then level 3 costs are losing customers and reputation, shrinking employee morale and higher turnover, increasing regulation by the government. So organizations really must consider the costs and recognize that in the longer run it's a lot less expensive to run a business that has a clear code of ethics. So there is also a pyramid of global corporate social responsibility and performance that needs to be considered. At the bottom, making a profit, and that's global capitalism, obeying laws as needed by global stakeholders, behaving ethically as expected by global stakeholders, and then at the highest level is a philanthropic as being hoped by being expected by global stakeholders. So there's a lot to be said about companies that are taking care of the earth and doing the right thing for stakeholders. With corporate social responsibility, economic is to be able to produce goods and services that society wants at a price that perpetuates the business and satisfies obligations to investors. Legal, to obey local, state, federal, and relevant international laws. Ethical, this is about meeting other expectations not written as the law. And then philanthropic, and these are additional behaviors and activities that society finds desirable and that the values of the business support those behaviors. Transcendent education is an education with 5 higher goals that balance self-interest and responsibility to others. That includes empathy, mutuality, civil aspiration, intolerance of an effective humanity. So, do businesses really have a social responsibility? From a shareholder model, this is a theory of corporate social responsibility that holds managers are agents of shareholders whose primary objective is to maximize profits. Consider the fact if you invest in a company, don't you want it to be a profitable company so that you benefit from it? And then there's the stakeholder model. That's this theory of corporate social responsibility that suggests that managers are obligated to look beyond profitability and help their organization succeed by interacting with groups that have a stake in the organization. You can do good and do well. Profit maximization and corporate social responsibility are often used to be and regarded as leading to opposing policies, but two views can converge. Recent attention has been considered on the possible competitive advantage of social responsibility actions. There's a real relationship between corporate social performance and corporate financial performance, and it's complex. There's socially responsible organizations don't necessarily become more or less successful in financial terms, and there are some financial advantages. For example, social responsible actions can have long-term benefits. Companies can avoid unnecessary and costly regulation that are if they're socially responsible. Honesty and fairness may pay great dividends to your conscience and personal reputation, and to the public image of the company, as well as in marketing or in any marketing that goes on. In addition, society's problems can offer businesses opportunities, and profits can be made from systematic and vigorous efforts to solve problems. Firms can perform a cost-benefit analysis to identify actions that will maximize profits while satisfying the demand for corporate social responsibility from multiple stakeholders. In other words, managers can treat corporate social responsibility as they would treat all investment decisions. This has been the case as firms attempt to reconcile their business practices with their effect on the natural environment. For a clearer link between social and business goals, companies can benefit from integrating social responsibility with corporate strategies, and society can benefit as well. Applying the principles of strategic planning, organizations can identify the specific areas in which they can capitalize on their own strengths to neutralize threats and benefit from opportunities that result from serving society of which they're a part. So, development truly can be sustainable. If you have an eco-centric management philosophy, your goal is to create a sustainable economic development and improvement of quality of life worldwide for all organizational stakeholders. Sustainable growth is economic growth and development that will meet present needs without harming the needs of future generations. And then life cycle analysis, or LCA, is a process of analyzing all inputs and outputs through the entire cradle to grave life of the product to determine total environmental impact. So, your challenge is to make sure you really understand all of the ethical implications that are involved when making a decision. And it is not always so easy. So you have to be aware of the different ethical perspectives: universalism, egoism, utilitarianism, relativism, virtue, ethics. You have to be aware of laws like the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. You have to be aware of ethics codes and ethics programs. Are they integrity-based or are they compliance-based? Is there a decision-making process that really considers all ethical implications? And are you looking at all levels of corporate and social responsibility, which includes economic, legal, ethical, and philanthropic? So anyway, I've given you a lot to think about in this over 20-minute video. I hope that you're taking some kind of knowledge that helps you be a more effective manager. I appreciate your time, and more importantly, I hope that you have a great day, because only you get to choose how you feel about it. I'm Dr. Paul Gerhardt.